Today, we're going to look at what is creativity and how can we harness it for successful innovations within our teams and organizations. And as our host notified everyone, if you have questions, please post them in the chat, and I'd be happy to make this more of a discussion. And I'd love to hear how you are involved in your own organizations and in what you do as well. So I am Nancy Eperjesy, co-founder of Mettle, and I bring over 2 decades of experience as an entrepreneur in the domain of advertising, design, and software development. And I am passionate about innovation and embracing change. Now, we are best known for developing the SkyBox tools, which made 360 VR post-production an easy and intuitive process. It was acquired by Adobe and integrated into Creative Cloud, and now is one of the top VR platforms available to content creators worldwide. So I am extremely passionate about creativity, and I recently completed an executive MBA, and my thesis was on key innovation drivers on creative software development. So as part of that, I did a deep dive into academic research on creativity. And as well, I interviewed top innovators worldwide. And in this presentation, I'm going to share my insight, what factors were present in all innovations based on my personal experience, academic research, and the insight of innovators worldwide. So creativity is quite the buzzword. Like, what exactly do we mean by creativity? Hi there, Axel. Thanks for joining us. You joined us at the right time. So what is creativity? So hot right now. So we're going to start off by defining creativity. Creativity is the act of turning new and imaginative ideas into reality. And why is that important? Because creativity powers innovation. So what is creativity? Is it a trait or is it a process? So it turns out that yes, there are traits that are present in creative people. One of the early psychologists who was a pioneer, who was head of the American Psychology Association, he found that that creativity was an innate human characteristic, and people who were more creative had more flexibility, were able to identify problems, and were more fluent in their thinking. Another pioneer was Sternberg, who said there's a tolerance for ambiguity and a willingness to surmount obstacles. Also, there's an intrinsic motivation to do the work. It doesn't matter if someone is trying to force you to do the work, you are drawn to that type of work. You find it satisfying, and you want to be satisfied. You want to be recognized for the efforts that you're putting into the work. Now, another psychologist divided people into different personality types. And the creative personality type had a high value of aesthetic qualities in experience, high energy, independence of judgment, self-confidence, autonomy, and trusted their intuition. He also identified, on the other end, the adaptive personality, and people who are more comfortable with the tried and true. They want to learn a process, they want to do their job according to the rules and regulations that are inherent in that work. And one is not better than the other. These are just different personality types. Now, if we look at more of a systems view of creativity, one of the pioneers was Teresa Amabile, and she sees creativity as the intersection between creative thinking skills, intrinsic motivation, and expertise. So if you're going to make a change and innovate, you have to have some kind of a deep skill that you're bringing into your creative field. And another prominent psychologist, Csikszentmihalyi, also saw creativity as a larger social construct where if you're going to make an impact with your innovation, you're not just tied in your own little bubble working. You have to be working with some peers in the field. They have to recognize what you're doing is relevant, and eventually that makes its way into the field in general and gets adopted and transforms it. So that is a key part of innovation. Now, it turns out that individual, team, and organizational creativity are linked. The same aspects that a person working alone and working on an innovation transfers onto teams and organizations. So what's one of the best things that you can do for yourself and in your team and organization is you have to be flexible and try as many things as you can. This is not the tried and true method where you're following a path. You're not sure how to get to your successful innovation. You have to be open to trying new things, and you know what? You have to take risks. And in your organization, risk taking has to be encouraged and supported, because chances are your first kick at the can, you're going to fail. But you're going to say, oh, this is why I failed, and move forward and keep going towards your ultimate goal. And what is your goal? You have to have an idea of what you have to have your eye on the prize, and your team is making its way there. So one of the innovators that I interviewed told me, you have to be able to fail and know that people above you are sympathetic when you fail, because failure is a part of learning. Another innovator I interviewed reinforced this and said, we needed lots of time for experimenting. Every step of the way, we encountered something new or unexpected. You're going into the unknown. You are going to encounter obstacles, but if you have a personality that welcomes change, is open to ambiguity, you can surmount this. And is creativity a finite substance? Can you use up all your creativity? No, it turns out that creativity is an ongoing process. And people who have brought, or organizations that have brought successful innovations to market, they have a history of past successful innovations, and creativity is not a one-time thing. So a past success is one critical indicator of future success, no matter how small that success is. One of the innovators I interviewed, he had in his spare time produced free shareware that he uploaded and was used by a professional group. And that learning experience helped him to move on to a larger project, a much bigger project that he was able to sell to a large multinational. So another critical component is your innovation assessment. So there's this idea we might have of innovators being alone in a lab somewhere working on things, but you're not innovating just for yourself. You have to have your end user in mind. So integrating them as testing and getting feedback is another critical component, and reaching out for tech allies is also another super important thing you can do. When you start your innovation, you have to think, oh, what other companies might be looking towards the same goal that have a complementary technology that will work with mine? Because innovation today, no matter what kind of company you're in, is relying on technology. That's the way we're moving forward. We're relying on a lot of deep expertise and complementary expertise. So feel free to ask questions. Our host will interrupt me if anyone has anything to say or inquire. Now, what about creativity in STEM teams? Because my background is from more advertising, design, motion graphics. Creative teams are used to design thinking, but what about creativity in STEM teams? How do you align your more tech-oriented team with other teams within your organization or even between organizations? Well, it turns out that there are some common factors between STEM-based specialists and non-STEM. So in STEM, you're trained to have rational, science-based solution. I know Axel can probably relate to this. And when you're working on something, you're not really motivated by the external rewards. You're looking at solving the puzzle. Like, how can I figure this out? And the project has to have a clear process. So how does this align with more creative teams? Well, it turns out that if you have shared goals and you are both intrinsically motivated, that's another commonality that you share, it makes it easier to have the buy-in and participation at the beginning of your project and work towards a common goal. And another key thing is passion really matters. In all the innovations I looked at, including our own, you have to have some type of a personal interest in what you're doing, because you're not going to put that effort to get to the finish line and keep trying and trying, because you are going to encounter obstacles. And to be motivated to surmount those obstacles, you have to feel in your heart and your brain that you want to work towards that goal. And funny enough, it's what your heart wants that you are drawn back to. So even in some of the innovators that I interviewed, they may have studied one thing, but there was some other expertise that they were interested in. And it may have started as a side project, and they're doing it in evenings and weekends, and they just try it out. And then that turned into their major innovation, because you're personally drawn to certain things. And one of the innovators that I spoke to also spoke about personal satisfaction. And he said, for a tech group, what is really important is why you do what you do and the end use of the product. When you participate in something that makes people happy using your product, you feel great. And that is truly invaluable. So that's part of being aware of who your customer is and addressing their needs as well, and not working in a vacuum. And another innovator I spoke with said, at the core, for these kinds of projects, there has to be great passion and great personal motivation. So when you're building your team or working for people to work with, one of your questions should be, have you worked on this? Are you really interested in working on this kind of project? Because it's going to make all the difference to set up a team of people that are genuinely interested in working on whatever the innovation is going to be. And at a higher level, I interviewed someone who has worked as a scientist at the IBM Research Lab, and now is one of the top data scientists in the world. And what he said is, if your innovation can have a bigger impact beyond simply making money for the company, this is something extremely valuable. If I can make my company happy, good. But if I can also make society happy, I will be even happier, because at the core, we're all humans and we all want to make a positive impact. So what is your innovation doing for society at large? That's just an extra factor that will make people more intrinsically motivated to push forward on a project. Now, how can I innovate? So the things to keep in mind are: start small. Test out a concept quickly. And a good entrepreneur or manager can balance the freedom of the team. You have to protect your team to work and insulate them from the more structured aspects of the company. So as an entrepreneur or owner of a company or a manager, you need to structure the ROI of the project and balance that with allowing your team to have enough freedom to work on what they're doing. And on a very personal level, what are you doing every day? How is everything you're doing aligning towards getting to that goal? Do you look at your activities and question why you're doing them? There should be a path to how they're linked to the goal. Another key factor is you should be part of a professional group to test out your idea, and that is your domain. When we spoke about the system model of creativity, you're not operating in a vacuum. Your domain has to see what you're doing and help shape and influence if it's ever going to be adopted by your customers. And focus on what you're interested in. Even if you have something else that's taking up most of your time, try to work on that side project that truly interests you. Try to work for a company where you feel that you're contributing something that you're genuinely interested, and also build those alliances with complementary expertise, because the more allies you have, the more likely your chance of success.
Hi, everyone. Just a quick time update that we have 5 minutes left, and there's also a question in the chat if you'd like me to read that right now.
Yes, please.
Okay, so it says, among creatives on a team, have you experienced resistance because you have an MBA? Strange connection, yes. As a project manager with an MBA, I push for creative solutions, but also need to consider ROI. That sometimes causes friction with others who may not share the totality of a project as a common goal.
Yes, because the MBA can be seen as the suit who's just focused on the bottom line and doesn't really care about the person, and you're seen as a cog in a wheel that's getting the company to a goal. I personally haven't experienced that, because most of my career I did not have an MBA, and I have and my other degrees are in communication design and psychology. So I think I have kind of an odd but balanced expertise, and I don't think people see me as a numbers person first, because with the team, I'm not talking about numbers. I'm talking about feature set, reaching a minimal viable product, linking customers. So the person that wrote that question, do you work, or is your background, what type of products are you working on developing with your team? It's funny because I think, in a way, working with the team, I've also coached on different sports teams. And sometimes you have to kind of shield your team from what you're truly worried about, and not make them aware of, oh, we're running out of time, our budget is coming to an end, and try to motivate people based on where they are in the project, and linking them to the enthusiasm of the customer and how it's going to be received in the market. But it's definitely a challenge because, you know, when you study business, it's very different than studying STEM or even having a creative field of study, because when you go to art school, for example, everyone there is creating and producing things. And when you're studying STEM, it's the same thing. You're learning a deep expertise that's usually based on an interest, and you're gaining an expertise in how to do something. But in business, you're basically learning how to manage other people who do all those things. So there can be some conflict between that, because the numbers people are basically pushing to get the project done to be most cost effective and get it to market as fast as possible. And that is one of the biggest challenges in balancing the ROI with allowing for creativity in your team. There's no doubt it's a big challenge.
We have to wrap this up, unfortunately, but I wanted to officially say thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed being here.